Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about you as an author. Again, for those who did not join us at the beginning, Eric is the author of The PayPal Wars. So, let's talk about that experience. I mean, maybe some highlights from the book, perhaps, or what was it like to be one of the very first employees at PayPal?
I had no idea what I was getting into. I'd actually come from the finance world, and I had been doing financial consulting, and it took me about a year to realize that really sucked, and that it was not a place, if you have any sense of ownership, if you're motivated, if you want to actually contribute, it's a terrible place to be. And so when I got the call to join Peter Thiel and go to PayPal, it was an easy one to take. I was eager to join him. So they had just done Series A at that point.
What was the pitch to you? What did they say to you? Do you remember?
Yeah, well, he said, this is going to take off like a rocket ship, and you should get on board now, and we'll figure out what you're going to do after you start. I mean, it was so 1999. It's ridiculous, right? And what's funny is the one thing Peter didn't pitch me on was something that he actually could have, and that was job security. Because I'd been working at Arthur Andersen before.
Yeah.
And it was a very respected global consulting and accounting company. And then, 2 years later, it's out of business because of Enron. And so what was interesting in that, you could look at it and get a sort of a microcosmic lesson, is it's hard to evaluate risk. It actually turned out to be much less risky to go to a startup.
Very good point. Who would have thought that at the time?
Right. It kind of defies conventional wisdom. But so that was something he did not say. He did not say job security, but it turned out that way. So my first day there, I'm putting my own desk together. I've got no title. I'm meeting
People made up all sorts of
engineers.
Crazy titles at the time.
Luke Nosek, who's with Founders Fund now, he's a brilliant guy.
Yeah.
He thought he was interviewing me when I showed up for the first day. Peter hadn't bothered to tell anyone he'd hired me. I gave notice. I show up later in the week, and then Luke is interviewing me. He says, well, what position do you think you're interviewing for? I'm like, I don't know, and I'm hired. So
I'm already hired. Yeah.
But it actually was good. It's kind of good to have like that shock to come into like this very unstructured environment, because that was exactly what enabled PayPal to move quickly.
Okay.
And I think a lot of the book, I talk about sort of the obstacles we overcome, because the entire title of the book is The PayPal Wars, battles with eBay, the media, the Mafia, and the rest of planet Earth. And if you can actually get through the whole book, that you realize what I mean. I mean, we did have to battle with everyone from government regulators.
Mafia?
Absolutely, the Mafia. The Mafia was stealing a lot of money out of PayPal. They were taking stolen credit cards that they got on the black market. So it's not like they hacked PayPal. They just took this data that they got elsewhere and walked right through the front door, made these PayPal accounts, and then would feed money up to like a master account that they could aggregate it and then wire it out of the system. And so you had this amazing amount of fraud that was scaling up to millions of dollars.
It's always amazing to see how the crooks take advantage of new technologies.
They're the first in there. And fortunately, we had a great tech team that Max Levchin, the CTO, led. And then, a lot of this technology has gone into Palantir, which is sort of a government services intelligence software that's a hot company up in Palo Alto. So this actually was a game changer in some ways. We got good at fighting fraud. They went to our competitors and put a lot of them out of business because they didn't have the same sort of fraud fighting tools that we did. But we spent a lot of money. Like I said earlier in the interview, we were losing $10 million a month in 2000. Now, some of that you could actually say was R&D in some way. It's like losing all this money to credit card fraud makes you pretty good at fighting credit card fraud. So it's certainly translated to PayPal's strength in the marketplace today. They got very good at defending against fraud.
And to look back at that, 10,000, wow, that's so much money. And then how do you rise like a phoenix out of that? I mean, talk about that a little bit. Well, everyone must have been, shaking.
It's several different factors, I would say, that led to that. First of all, Peter Thiel's an amazing CEO. He ran the organization. It wouldn't have happened otherwise. David Sachs, who subsequently started Genie.com and Yammer, is also brilliant. And he's a wonderful product tactician, the best I've ever met. And he really kept us very focused on the product. So where I was on that side of the company, we were just we're almost doing lean development before lean development existed. Right? I mean, it was still kind of a waterfall world back then. But we had these really fairly short pushes. And the goal was to get things out there very quickly and then make improvements to it once they were out there. So we didn't know it was lean development, and it wouldn't have fit that cleanly, but that's kind of what we were doing. So a lot of cycles, moving quickly, and also responding to our customers. I mean, it was customers contacting us.
Seems like some of the fundamentals, really. You know,
when you
having
think
good
about it,
leadership, you're responding to customers.
hey, the company pivoted twice in two major ways, both the platform and the market in the first 6 months I was there. We started out as kind of being P2P focused, person-to-person payments on Palm Pilots of all things.
I remember that.
So we ditched the Palm, went to the web, and then we subsequently also ditched P2P and focused on auction payments. And that was because customers were contacting us and saying, hey, can I use this for my auction? Can you give me a banner?
And had you not thought of that before? Was that something that came specifically from customers?
It was the emphasis was definitely on customers, and there's a good book that came out last year called Viral Loop.
Yeah.
And I would recommend that, not just because
Viral Loop, everybody.
Viral Loop. It's not just because they quote the PayPal wars in it, but it is a good book. And the author used a good term. He talked about PayPal as a stackable network. So we built our network on top of eBay's network, and that realization that that was the fastest way to grow and outscale our competitors and get to a network effect, I think is what gave PayPal sort of the leverage to raise money and then also persevere through all the financial losses that we had while we were growing the company.
From a marketing perspective, what did you go through?
Oh, it was challenging. It was challenging. We went from...
And how did, like, maybe give an example or two of some of the things that you had to address head on and how you dealt with them.
We started out having no clue as to what we were doing. We hired James Doohan, from Scotty from Star Trek.
Really?
Yes. Yes, and so I just want to say I was not involved in that decision. That was before I got there. But Scotty, the whole beam me up, beam money, it was sort of where the branding was back then. So it took us a while to figure out how do we describe our product in a way that makes sense to someone when it's a brand new technology.
Yeah, exactly. And how do you, give them the security that it's okay, it's safe.
And then when we had like all these broad uses, like send money to a kid in college, split up the dinner bill.
Right.
It's really hard to describe kind of the benefits. I mean, marketing always wants to be able to describe the benefits, not the feature.
Exactly.
And so that's a challenge when you've got a cool feature, and in your mind there's a million different benefits.
Right.
It kind of makes for scattered messaging. But we got better as we narrowed down our focus, figured out our market, and refined our product. Now, we went through some branding issues. I won't go into that. It's all in the book. It took us a while to figure out what the PayPal brand was going to be. And then we also sort of had this challenge of being able to communicate with our users and going from a place where they really love you, when you're free, you're giving out $10 bonuses to sign up, and we started charging later in the year to cut down on that $10 million monthly burn rate. So there was a lot of customer pushback on that. So there really were a lot of bumps in the road as the marketing department went along at PayPal.
What are some of the best ways to stay in touch with customers, to communicate with them, to keep that dialogue open?
Oh, that's hard. I mean, I think you just need multiple touch points, for one thing. And this is not something that wasn't written about in Clue Train Manifesto years ago. It's like you be authentic, allow for a conversation. Just realize
we hear that all the time.
I would hope so.
Yeah, exactly.
The broadcast model's dead. You can't do one-to-many, so you really have to sort of have something that feels authentic, that's as targeted as possible, but then also allows for them to give you feedback. And what we're doing at our company, I mean, CapLink is so small, there's just 4 of us working on the product right now. But what we're doing conference calls with our users.
Okay.
I have email conversations with them all the time. I've done phone calls with some of them.
And they're open to that.
Face-to-face meetings. Absolutely. When you're really early on, and especially, it's amazing the amount of grace you can get just by putting beta on your website.
This is true.
4 little letters. It's amazing. People will cut you slack.
Sometimes 4-letter words are very acceptable.
Beta does not need to be bleeped out. In fact, it's one that I think everyone should embrace when they're launching. Now, don't abuse it. Don't say like I can be a jerk to my customers because I'm in beta. But just realize that you do get some grace, and they're willing to give you feedback. And then, of course, there's tools like survey.io that people can use to get that feedback loop. But I think the important thing is, have multiple ways to reach you. Reach out to your customers proactively, talk to them, bring them into the office, meet them in a coffee shop if they're local.
Right.
Just to get that feedback loop going, because that's the only way you're actually going to learn how to speak to them in a way they want to hear from you.
This is very true.